And very polite gentleman.
Good evening. Oh, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the two in the front. How about y'all in the back? Welcome to the Assemblage. I would love to invite you all, if you are seated in the back, to come forward. Come join us in the front. Come join us near the speakers. Let's make this event more intimate, more special for us all. Please come forward. My name is Jake. Welcome to the Assemblage. If this is your first time here, we are a community of individuals and businesses who believe in doing well by doing good, being of service to others, and going higher. So we practice that through our ethos, which we maintain in memberships, member-led events such as this one, through workshops, through daily wellness programming, co-working, co-living spaces, retreat spaces upstate. Lots of exciting things happening here. If you guys and gals are really curious about what we do here and would like to be a part of the community, please come find myself or anyone with these magical pom-poms after the event, and we'd be happy to talk to you more about what we do here. Really quick before we do start, if you need to use the restroom, you can do so right here on your right. If you are thirsty, if you're parched, you can get a beautiful elixir. They're here till 11 o'clock, and I have delicious food upstairs on the 3rd floor available till 10. So please help yourself after the event. One more thing, if you do have cell phones or anything that makes a sound, do us all a favor and just turn that off so we can be really present as a group together with this. This is a really special event. So now, I want to introduce our speakers for the evening. These two individuals are very highly recommended and have really wonderful accomplishments. So I'm really happy to introduce our first guest. She's an author, an artist, and a minimalist. Her photographic work is actually on the permanent collection at the Leslie Lohman Museum for Gay and Lesbian Art. And she's a certified Konmari consultant. So please welcome Jessica Jutrovsky. Thank you, Jessica, for being here. Our second guest is the co-director for the Center for Integrated Hypnosis. He works with hypnotherapy, regression therapy, meditation. He also leads a trance writing workshop here at the Assemblage on John Street once a month. The next one's happening next month in May, trance writing. So come back for that, y'all. Please welcome Daniel Ryan. Let's get things started, you guys. Thanks for being here.
All right, hello. Welcome. I'm Dan.
I'm Jessica.
So I'm going to take the opportunity to kind of introduce everybody to what we'll be doing this evening, tell you a little bit more in detail about myself and about Jessica, and just to let everybody know up top, again, of course, the name of this event tonight is Konmari and Hypnotherapy. Internal reflects external. And in a conversation that Jessica and I have been having for years now, we've been exploring that idea through various ways and have just in the last couple of weeks and months really come to this new kind of point in the conversation where there's an entirely new set of tools, Konmari, that are here for us to talk about tonight, and the tool of hypnotherapy, which I try to use and understand as kind of organizing and decluttering our inner space. So setting up tonight with this idea, discussing it from that point of view, having the opportunity to talk a little bit and interview Jessica, and we'll go back and forth and have some opportunity to explore these principles, these metaphors, these ideas. And then there will also, of course, be an opportunity to hear from you. We also want to have this kind of conversational openness and communicate with everybody in the room here. And then there will also be an opportunity to do an exercise tonight. I'll guide a brief hypnotherapy exercise towards the end that will be dedicated to decluttering our inner world before we conclude for the evening. So how am I doing so far? Is that good?
I can't wait to do the meditation.
Yeah, I know, me neither. So to tell you a little bit about our esteemed guest, Jessica, and of course correct me if I get any of this wrong, but I think I'm pretty good, received her MFA from the Parsons in the New School for Design, from Parsons in the New School of Science. Yeah. Published her first book of photography with Powerhouse Books in 2010, and the second book of photography in 2015. In 2017, publishing her first book of poetry called Pink Privacy. As you heard before, has pieces on the permanent collection, with the Leslie Lohman Museum of Gay and Lesbian Art and the Museum of Sex, and is a certified KonMari consultant and lifestyle coach focusing on aesthetic and creative inspired living. How'd I do?
It was long.
Yeah, that was long. So, starting us off, Jessica, tell us, how do you describe KonMari?
Well, the KonMari method is this very specific tidying method that was developed by Japanese tidying guru Marie Kondo. She's a best-selling author, and now the star of the new Netflix series, Tidying Up with Marie Kondo. Has anybody been watching it or seen it? Okay, so if you're familiar with that, you may be familiar a little bit with her actual process. It's an in-home process where you tidy or organize, whatever word you feel comfortable using. She uses tidying, and you do it in a very specific way. You go through 5 categories in your home, and those categories are clothing, books, papers, kimono, which is a miscellaneous category, and then sentimental items. So that's sort of the main order that you're supposed to follow when you apply her method to your home. And then the second aspect of it is that when you're going through these items, you are keeping those items that, quote, spark joy. So that's sort of a summation of what the actual KonMari method is, and I'm sure we'll delve deeper into how that sort of intersects with a lot of the work that you do, and also a lot of the work that we've also done, because I've seen Dan as my hypnotherapist, so there's a lot of intersecting.
So in our conversation earlier today, based on our previous sessions, we were talking about this one particular moment that you described, which we've talked about before, but knowing we would be here tonight, it hit me in a different way. When you were describing this kind of revelation of the idea of our triggers hiding in plain sight. Triggers hiding in plain sight. For instance, in our homes are the most comfortable environments to us. There will be the most unconscious associations happening at any given time with the books and photos and everything that we have around us, the stuff that's in our homes that we live with every day and might normally just delete out of our attention because it's been there for so long. And you described that idea as setting you off on a kind of journey that I'd love to hear more about.
Well, when I was working with Dan, and I can't count how many years ago that was, it sort of began around the time that I was introduced to KonMari, or I think we started working slightly before that. And I recall this moment that I had sitting in my home. And I would consider myself a pretty tidy person, and but you know, always trying to be better at being organized, getting organized. And I was sitting in my apartment, and I had had many sessions with Dan where he would say, your triggers are hiding in plain sight. And I always took that to mean, you know, the people in your life or the thoughts at the top of your mind, that those things are triggering you. And I had this moment where I was sitting on my couch and I was looking at everything in my immediate environment and thought, this doesn't represent who I am at all. These things that I've accumulated over the years, either I've outgrown them, I really dislike them, it doesn't represent me in this very real way, and it was shocking. It was upsetting, and it was very triggering, and then it was triggering on top of that because I realized I was sitting in a room of triggers. So I started really thinking about how what I was trying to cultivate through the work I was doing with Dan was really, it wasn't happening in my environment, and I really wanted to work towards what was going on in here, and the evolution that was occurring in my life was also being reflected externally. So that sort of set me on this path of really taking a deep dive into my lifestyle, how I was living, the people I was surrounding myself with, the choices I was making, just even the language I was using, my stories, like being really aware of like the stories that I was telling people about myself and how I was sort of referring to myself as this fixed object with this, pre-programmed story, and I would go around telling people that, and at the same time I was holding on to all of these stories and ideas in my home, things that I had acquired and that maybe no longer served me, or maybe I had evolved past. So that's kind of where I was sitting on this couch and I was like, I gotta get rid of this couch. Like, it's not, it's not me. It's not who I am. And it didn't have anything to do with aesthetics necessarily. It just didn't feel right. It felt like I was living in a past that I didn't like anymore. And I didn't feel like I was living in the present. And so that's kind of really what provoked me to make a real change, not just a spring cleaning. Because when you think spring cleaning, you're like going in, you're reducing, and what I love about the KonMari method is that you're really evaluating these items that you're choosing to keep in your life. And you begin to be the arbiter of taste, so to speak, for yourself. And that's not just on the objects that you have in your home, but like I was saying, it extends all across. So I don't know if it was like the hypnotherapy came first or KonMari came first, but like they really worked beautifully in tandem and started to this like big upheaval, because once it clicks for you, you can't unlearn that moment when you just sort of wake up.
So with that revelation, when you began to address not only your space, but your creative practice, your artistic practice, looking at it through a lens of psychology, a number of questions really, but two. So where did you start? And not only in addressing the space around you, but also inside, what felt like the first steps?
Do you mean with the external steps?
I mean with both, really. Just the idea of, what to do then. You had this revelation, so what was your next step? Did you start by throwing out the couch? Did you start by meditating?
Okay.
Did you start by removing books? What happened next?
Well, when you work with Dan in a session, he takes out this notepad and starts writing things. And I recalled, venting about a lot of things that were going on in my life and a lot of things that were more geared towards my creative pursuits. And you would always ask, well, how do you want to feel? Like after I've listed all the negative things that I was unhappy about, you would ask, how do you want to feel? And I think that I took that approach to my home as well. And I feel that at the beginning, you really have to go through everything quickly and maybe not spend so much time on one item just to kind of purge, so to speak. Because when you have a lot of things either on your mind or physical things in your space, you can't think. I love a cluttered desk as a cluttered mind. I fully just exist in that quote, because I felt like once I started going through the house and just doing that first sweep, I started to gain clarity and I started to hone my sensibility to what really mattered. And it wasn't the things that I bought, and then the things that I truly cherished that were part of my life, I wasn't honoring them because I wasn't wearing the clothes that I had, that I spent a lot of money on, that I thought, maybe I wasn't good enough to wear it. They still had tags on it. Oh, I'll wait for like a fancy day to wear this fancy outfit. And then I'll just wear these grungy clothes, and because that's what I deserve. So like having that moment too was also very potent, because then you start to get into like the psychological aspects of, your confidence and what you think you do and do not deserve. So it is a confrontation and it's a mirror. So when you start with the first category of clothing, I feel like it's easy to get rid of those items for me. I just went through really quickly. But then after I completed the whole house, I went through the process a few times. If you read Konmari's book or watch the show, she suggests that you do it once, and it's meant to be done very abruptly, because it's shocking. When you take everything out of your home in any one given category, it's alarming sometimes. And it's a way of facing what's really going on in your mind as well, what you've accumulated over time. And I think so. I started with a few purges, and I remember I was just doing a basic spring cleaning. I had never heard of the Konmari method before. A friend of mine just told me about the book, and I downloaded on Audible, and I started listening to it, and I went back after I did this spring cleaning, and I got rid of 3 times the amount, because I wasn't going through with intention. I was going through with this idea of like, oh, I just need to reduce, like I have too much and it's making me uncomfortable. But then when I read sort of more of her philosophy, I got really into the intentionality of it. Like, you pick up every garment and you ask yourself a set of questions, and then you sort of get into a flow and you move through your whole house with that same attitude. And I forgot what you asked me now.
I was asking about the first things that you did, really, when you had that revelation, and you told us. Yeah. Just to give context for what she mentioned a moment ago about that question of how would you rather feel. Hypnotherapy, one of the beautiful things about it, one of the things I very much enjoy in the practice of it, as a tool, you may have heard it's effective at communicating with and working with the subconscious mind, or the unconscious. And this is true. And not only is it true, but really, perhaps even more specifically, it's excellent at working for the negative space and working with the negative space of what we aren't thinking about, or what we are deleting without realizing it, or the possibility that is also hiding in plain sight that we're simply blind to because we're paying attention to other things. So there's this question in most sessions, not all, of hypnotherapy that I'll do, when I will ask the person I'm with, how would you rather feel? To get their vocabulary for their resource states and how relaxation or confidence or ease or peace appears and exists for this particular person, so that during the hypnosis itself, when we're in the practical portion of the session, I have their vocabulary that I can reference and offer to them their language for their resources, instead of me projecting my idea of how they should be on top of them. And in doing this, invariably, one of the things that ends up happening, and this, of course, happens in many different ways. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but I'll describe it to the point of our conversation as a subtraction. The first step in the process is often removing dilutants, inessentials, pollutants, the things we don't need that are getting in the way or creating unnecessary confusion where there might otherwise be clarity or simplicity. So starting by removing from one's thinking process, or whatever it is that they are struggling with at that moment, if it's a struggle, starting with the first step of subtraction.
There's also a misconception a bit, I think, about Konmari and the Konmari method, that she's a minimalist, and she's not. If you would ask her, she is concerned with living a life that sparks joy. And I'm a minimalist, so I try to reduce in other ways, and it doesn't bring me joy to consume a lot, and that goes from objects, media. I don't want to consume too much social media or too much stimulation even. And I think also, to your point of how you work with your clients and you ask them, how do you want to feel? One thing that I ask my clients before we start working together is, what is your ideal lifestyle? And if you make a list of those qualities, and you compare it to how you're currently living, it seems a little bit intimidating, like, well, how am I going to get here if I'm living in this opposite way? And I think it's a really interesting conversation starter with, when you are in someone's home, I already have their responses of what their ideal lifestyle is, and their home looks completely different from that. So it's kind of this idea of having a clean slate so that you can build those qualities that they are trying to work towards, these goals they're trying to work towards. And part of that is just assessing what they want to keep and assessing what they feel like they should be parting with or discarding. So it is a very mindful method and a practice. It feels very meditative when you're moving through a home with these perimeters, I guess you would say. Just like I said before, it's very different from a spring cleaning. Like, you're considering, you're really thinking about what you've done, like all of these things that you've bought, and then you start thinking about how you want to feel, how you want to live, how you could be living, and really getting into the headspace of that in your own physical space. And when I talked to you about that triggers story, I remember when I was sitting on the couch, I was also looking at books that had a lot of text on them. And, you're taking in content whether you're actively reading it or not. And I remember I had all these self-help books and then a lot of academic books. And I was thinking, oh God, can you imagine you're sitting down on the couch to chill out and watch television, and, a book is staring at you that's saying the word trauma in the title. It's like, that's not very relaxing. And also, like, I don't feel connected to that anymore. And so it's a lot about really scrutinizing what's in your, for me, eye line in your home. That's why I love minimalism so much, because you can sort of exist in your space without being bombarded by messages of, either text or objects or to-do lists. I have a whole, we started talking about a to-do list. I love to Konmari a to-do list. Like, how many of these things on this list should I even be doing, really? And how many times am I going to go back and actually do these things on a list, and maybe they don't matter anymore. And so it's also about constantly checking in, because once you do something like the Konmari method, it's a continual maintenance of editing and being mindful about what you're now letting into your space, what you're now letting into your life. And it's tangible when you're talking about objects, but then it becomes very much a practice of self-love in a lot of ways, because you begin to assess relationships you have with people. I've worked with clients that we start their home and they approach it in a very playful way, and next thing you know, they're like breaking up with their partner because their partner's not sparking joy for them, and they want to live their ideal lifestyle. And I didn't tell them to do that. They were just like, oh, I had a really good session with my sock drawer, and I had some thoughts while I was folding my laundry, and he doesn't spark joy. So it's a very inward experience, but it's manifested externally, just like the way we arrange our homes and then how we live our life. It keeps like rippling out.
Wanting to define triggers as we're talking about them, too oftentimes a lot of this common psychological parlance will even kind of lack definition because we haven't really looked at it in a while. As you mentioned, eye line, the truth of a trigger is it can be anything. It is sensory information. That's it. Things we see, touch, hear, smell, or taste if they apply. And, the way a trigger works psychologically or neurologically, again, will be just as unique to each one of us as it is also general, that it can just be and is sensory information. So as we're talking about triggers tonight, just being aware of that, that, of course, anything, a glass of water will trigger refreshment, hopefully. So now that there is a Netflix show and the book is as popular as it is, we were talking about this a little bit earlier as well, tell us about the positives that have come out of this heightened kind of awareness of KonMari as a method, and then some of the negatives or the baggage too that you might have noticed. I don't want to say negatives, but some of the things that might be deeper in the practice that you feel aren't really represented in the show or something.
I feel that it's fantastic that I'm just hearing people on the street say, this doesn't spark joy, or, this situation doesn't spark joy, like they're extending it past objects. And of course you hear, people talking about it, with tangible things in stores. And that makes me so happy that her show has made it a little bit more of a household practice, and she's more of a household name. To speak to maybe some of the more challenging aspects I see after the Netflix show as a consultant is on the show, they're only showing you basically the highlight reel of what these families actually went through. These were very intense journeys, and I don't say intense in a negative way. I just mean that they were so transformative, and you can only capture so much in a short period of time with each of these families. And there were consultants like myself helping the families complete the entire process when Marie would leave. So she would come in and she would guide the process. But there is this accountability factor that was not shown as much as I thought it would have been. But I think it's important that people are aware of, like, taking this on your own. That's great, and you can absolutely do that. But being with somebody through this process is very beneficial. It can get very deep very quick. It can get very intense. It can get fun. It can get light. You go through a range of emotions. But often when I talk to people about KonMari, or they know that I do in-home consulting, they're like, oh yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, I KonMari'd. I did that. I tried that. And so I'll inquire, like, how far did you get? Did you get through sentimental items? Like, whoa, because I called a consultant before I became a consultant. I actually hired a consultant because I wanted to deepen my practice with the KonMari method, and I was really struggling with sentimental items. And I remember when she came into my home, she literally, I gave her a house tour. I told her all of my issues. I just took her through everything. And I told her I was struggling with sentimental in particular. And she just said, okay, listen to me ranting. And then we went back upstairs and she said, okay, let's take out all your clothes. And I was like, clothes? We're starting with the first category again? But it was so eye-opening because that first step that you take is so crucial, because you're learning to hone your sensibility and working on your sensitivity to what sparks joy or what keeps you excited in life. And if you're struggling in any one area, it's probably because you need to go back and restart, or at least revisit and revise a bit. So I found that to be something that I've run into after the Netflix show, that people think it's just like the folding method, and they're like, oh yeah, I KonMari, I fold like that, or I just identify things that don't spark joy when I'm shopping. So, but I remember also having this conversation with somebody that was a client, and we were talking in a group of 3, and she was like, "Oh yeah, Jessica, we were working in my home, and it's really great." And the woman said to her, "Oh, I did that." And she goes, "You did? Like, you worked with a consultant? That's just so cool." She's like, No, me and my husband just we watched the show and we folded clothes." And so I think that, yeah, it's just about education. There are differences. You can get there on your own for sure. But as a consultant who hired a consultant, it was a night and day experience. It's just similar to I was telling you earlier, but I guess this is kind of silly. I'm not going to get the insights, self-hypnosis that I get when you're guiding it. It's a much deeper practice. And I also had this thought earlier today when we got off the phone that what would it be like for you if you actually visited the homes of your clients? Because you would gain so much more insight into how they lived. And I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget it. That the way someone is living their life, their home is a physical manifestation of what's going on. So let me say that again. The way someone is living their life in their home is a physical manifestation of that life. And it's similar with thinking about hypnotherapy, and your thoughts are really driving the car of your behavior, your lifestyle, what you think you do and do not deserve. So it's so connected, and I'm I want to work with people that work with you as well, because you can actually see what is going on externally, because our environment is supposed to support us. So if you're going home every day and you're not excited about going home, something's off. I feel like something needs to shift. So maybe you can speak more to that point.
The going home part? Well, I have done some house calls, of course, and you're correct. Being able to see people's environments does offer layers of insight before we even get into the actual process of hypnotherapy. And then we had also spoken about, kind of psychological equivalents, at least in the broader subject that we're exploring here, things like hoarding, things like OCD, things like parts that, speaking for myself, on a long enough spectrum, I'm capable of any of these things, including, of course, obsessive thoughts. So, how we address and what we do when in ourselves or in our homes these things become apparent. I'm struck, for instance, by the commonality of lists, but in one case, it is a source of freedom, and in the other, it's a tyrant. Working with obsessive-compulsive clients in the past, oftentimes there is a slavish, tyrannical relationship to lists. And God forbid something is forgotten from that list. And who knows if the list was important to begin with. There's just lists upon lists. And, appreciating the complexity and the sensitivity with compassion for anybody who might be in that situation, how we disengage from that way of thinking and get back to an alignment with a value system that is connected to the way things are, or the real world, or again, whatever this person, this hypothetical person, would need to return to, that they can see, oh wait, that list's not important. And again, of course, that process is unique with each of us. But yet, I often think about, though, again, Konmari, and just wishing in those times that hypnotherapy and Konmari were one thing, and perhaps they are, but that essentially the internal and the external could be worked with, together. And again, it is. if we're actually noticing the full picture. But yeah, really, I'm just saying I wish I had a greater tool to help people at those moments.
I think I want to talk about how I love vision boards, but I know some people like them, some people don't. And I think it's really useful before you move through your home in order to transform it. You sort of do a vision board with people when you're asking them how they want to feel. And I feel like that includes their environment, right? Because I'm sure people list the things that I've listed, like I want to feel relaxed, I want to feel supported, I want to feel safe. Our homes are our safe havens. And sometimes we just use them like a locker room. And I think that if we could think about how our spaces supporting us, we would have a very different relationship to, I want to say, I guess, when you're organizing your home or when you're assessing everything that you have in your space, you are physically cultivating space for ideas to spontaneously happen, for new opportunities, for time, for reflection, for meditation. To speak to the to-do list, if you're going to continue to put things on a to-do list and not go back and edit, revise, or just cross those things off that you don't even want to do those anymore, you're creating more work for yourself. And I feel like the more you accumulate in your home, you're creating more work to do for yourself. You're creating less space. You're actually creating less physical space for yourself and more things to do. And in addition to that, you are paying rent for those things. Do you matter or do those things matter? So I think about that a lot when I start to feel like my space is taking over. Like the things in my space are taking over and I don't have room to relax. And I think that should be something that you think about when you go home at night. Is my space supporting me, or do I feel burdened by it? Same with thoughts. Is this thought serving me? Is this pattern that I'm repeating with this person serving me? So I just feel like it could be extended. And I mean, I've had plenty of experiences with you in, trans states where, these things spontaneously happen, but that's because Dan is holding space for me to discover those things. So imagine what a session would be like if somebody addressed their actual living space first and then went into a session with you. That would be incredible, because now automatically they're not unconsciously thinking about those things back at home that they have to tend to. It becomes a non-issue. And it does, again, like I said, create space, create room for spontaneity, love, joy, all of these things that we tell Dan when we go into our session with him that we want to feel, that we can actually be working on that outside of the session.
Beautiful, thank you. So in a few minutes, we'll switch gears, and I'm going to offer a brief exercise. But before we do that, I wanted to open it up to all of us here. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, please. I'm going to bring you the mic, actually. Oh, here you go. Thanks, Jake.
I thought it was interesting about your comments about your desire to combine the hypnotherapy with the Konmari. I don't know if I pronounce it right. And I was wondering if a person could, if you could hypnotize someone and then they could go through the method. And like, Because it kind of seems like that is, like you're talking about this trance state, and when you touch things and you ask those questions, it seems like you're accessing a different part of your brain in terms of making the decision about whether or not you want to keep the thing. So it looks like you have an answer to that question.
Well, not a total answer, but I have sort of an opinion about it. I think that when you're touching your objects, it becomes this very tactile thing. So like take books, for example. You're looking at your bookshelf, right? And you're running your fingers across the title, and say you're flirting with the idea of doing the KonMari method on your book section. And you don't take them off the shelf. You're just looking at them where they're placed. So your relationship to them is a distanced one. Now, when you take the books off the shelves and you lay them all out, which sounds like a big hassle, you're waking them up. And then you're touching them without opening the book, and you're asking yourself to have basically a communication or, you know, a response from this book or a response from you that's going to ultimately result in you keeping it or discarding it. So I don't know how that would work in a trans-like state, but I think it's more of like setting it up so that their desires are aligned. So say somebody spoke to you about what their desires are, and then I'm talking to somebody in a more visual way of like, you know, what kind of architecture do you like? What kind of space do you want to live in? And then there's a lot of crossover questions like, what would you like to be doing with your time? So all of these things go hand in hand, I think, and it can go in so many directions in each category, but ultimately it's about environment and mindset and your state, the state that you want to be in as opposed to the one that you're not happy with. So if that's an anxious state, a sad state, a fearful state, I think that you can achieve that in hypnotherapy, you can achieve it in KonMari, but it's like having the goals. And sometimes like I meet with clients and they don't know what their ideal lifestyle is because they've just been told through consumerism what the cool thing is, and they just purchase that, and so they're just trying to figure it out. And do you ever have experiences when people come to you and they're like, I don't know what's wrong with me, I just don't feel good?
Yes. In fact, you know, those kinds of issues often show up generalized. I'm not a clinician, so you know, I have nothing to say about diagnoses or medical information, but the diagnosis, generalized anxiety disorder, is precisely what you just described in a medical context, this idea that we don't know where it comes from, you're just anxious. And I don't care for that diagnosis if we're allowed to critique them, which we are, frankly. But yes, to answer your question, oftentimes, and for each of us, again, any one of us that lives with something chronically will generalize across time and experience, and that includes the neurological experience of that. So the brain is literally generalizing the information, and that's even a very positive, of course, to aspect of our learning. For instance, if a child goes to pet a dog, and the dog bites their hand, the child doesn't usually become afraid of that dog. They become afraid of all dogs because the brain has generalized across this group for the protection of the child. So, yeah, generalization in this way is very common. And of course, we start drilling down immediately into what the specifics and the details for this person are.
You can get really specific too. As soon as somebody fills out what their ideal lifestyle is, it's like, well, this is an action list. We can totally like jam on this right now. Like, let's go after your ideal lifestyle. Don't worry about the details. Like, we'll get to that end point, but it's just about, I think, starting it, right? Just like having the initial conversation of what it is that you do want for yourself and maybe for your family. So just, you know, starting with questions and then, like you said, drilling down. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I love the interplay between you two. Have you spoken together before like this?
Nope.
On the phone.
Well, yes, privately.
It just feels like one of the smoothest podcasts I've ever heard. Both.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
the interplay of these two ideas, where did that come from? Because it's this discussion is much more profound than I thought it would be. But I think I was anticipating that somehow we would be using hypnosis to have to make the KonMari experience easier, and I see it's a sort of flow back and forth. Has that? I mean, you're talking about how they work well in conjunction. Mm-hmm. Do you ever have the experience of having a hypnotic experience or giving that to someone and then helping them take some of that deeper connection with their subconscious into the KonMari work?
Yeah, appreciate it. Not specifically, not just yet. But one thing on the subject of hypnosis, so we all know, as we're talking about self-talk and thoughts and psychology and everything, all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. That's the core principle. All hypnosis is self-hypnosis. So while it's true that there are external sources of our attention vying for our attention, at any given time, we need only think about all the advertising around the city that, again, we are deleting from our attention as we're moving about town. At any given time, the most powerful hypnotist will be your self-talk. So it's really a reminder more than anything else that our own biases and filters and past experiences are at any given time the most, I'll say, difficult thing for us to overcome or step out of to see another experience. And again, coming back to the question, one of the most common misconceptions about hypnosis having 200 years of the shittiest PR possible, is that the hypnotist puts trance into another person. You know, the idea itself is so creepy inherently, when in fact trance is common and naturally occurring. For each of us, please take with you, this will change the way you see all suggestibility, just knowing that we're all already deeply in trance. It's always happening. It's common and naturally occurring. Think about the states we go into as we're looking at phones and screens and computers. The screen is an inherently trance-inducing substance. We know this. So these common and naturally occurring trances that are always present, including trances of anxiety or joy or all of the emotional trances that can happen. I'm now totally in love with the idea of using an exercise, which we are going to do an exercise in a few moments, which is intended to set us up, to put one in the right state to then enter your space and do with it whatever you would do. I defer to each of us as the expert on ourselves here. But the exercise we'll do is intended to tee up something of what you were describing there. And absolutely, I love the idea now of asking somebody, what state would you need to be in to look at your environment and feel like, all right, cool, let's go. I mean, does this spark joy? Yes or no? And then just, you know?
It becomes very easy. I feel like when I move through a session with a client, they get it immediately, and then they're able to apply it as we move on to different categories. Some go faster, some go slower. It just depends on like what you've collected. If you're like a book person, or if like, you have a lot of pots and pans, you'd be surprised. And I think that the thing that I encounter sometimes is that when you go into someone's home, it's very intimate, it's very personal. You don't know if someone's going to burst into tears, and I equate that to like your experiences probably working with clients, is that it is very intimate, it's very personal. They don't know if they're going to burst into tears, and you're sort of they're allowing you to help them step into their own mind, and that's a little intimidating. I'm stepping into people's spaces. That is, what they've created for themselves. So I don't mean to speak about it in this dark way, because it's actually a very quick and light process when you get into it, and it's very exciting, exhilarating, and I can't tell you enough from my own personal experience that such a burden has been lifted off of my life from doing this work, and also from connecting with Dan, dealing with my own anxieties, it's like it's just gone. And what would your life be like? What would you be doing if that burden were lifted? So discovering how you can do that, I think is really, I'm excited about people that want to have that journey and want to feel like your list, like peace, happy, maybe like rich, or whatever they put on that. You know, it's like you can have that for yourself 100%. You just have to want it and move towards that desire in a very authentic way.
So any other questions at this time? Yeah, going once, going twice. All right, wonderful. And shall we do an exercise now? Why don't we do that? Yeah. We'll start by looking at a brief presentation that Jessica brought with her, and we'll dovetail right into the exercise from that. But I'm excited for you to show this as well, actually, because here's the physical representation of what we're talking about.
So I'll share with you, right around the time when I was working with Dan, I was in graduate school. And this is my apartment. I know the pictures are sort of small, and it's a little messy in these pictures. But I think it's important to point out that, you know, while I didn't consider myself a particularly messy person, I thought I was pretty organized. I didn't feel like my home was representative, as I mentioned earlier, of the life that I wanted to live. And what was really upsetting about that was that I was creating this for other people. I was working in the arts. I was creating beautiful content for other people, but I wasn't doing it for myself in my own home, and I didn't even recognize that. And so something about coming in contact with the Konmari method really woke me up to being able to then transfer what I've been doing for other people onto my own life. And this was what I was able to create after I took myself through the process. And this is the same apartment. And I'm still shocked by it. And I think there's some friends in the audience that come to my apartment are like, God, it feels so good in here. But I feel good in here. And that's the point. I didn't create this for guests because, frankly, I don't have a lot of guests over. I spend most of my time at home, and I wanted my space to reflect the love and passion I have for meditation, for relaxation, and for reflection. So, yeah.
So just upon seeing this, I want to check in one more time. Any questions about the photos or about Jessica's process before we do a quick exercise? Okay, wonderful. So making yourselves comfortable, please. This exercise will last about 5 to 10 minutes. We might think of it as a guided meditation with a specific agenda and a great deal of technique. Finding a relaxed, natural posture. And with eyes closed, we'll begin with a deep cleansing breath. And taking another. And taking one more, and this time exhaling twice as long, letting all the air out of the lungs. And just checking in with your body now. And imagining what it might feel like if a gentle wave of relaxation were to cascade down from the crown of your head, relaxing the muscles around the eyes and the nose, the cheeks and the jaw, the neck to the shoulders, washing away anything that you don't need, anything left over from earlier in the evening, the afternoon, or this morning. This relaxation moving down around the heart and the lungs, the spine to the core, down the arms to the hands and past the hips, and down both legs all the way to the bottoms of your feet. Feeling the body connected and complete from the crown of the head to the tips of the toes as the next deep breath rises and is exhaled twice as long. And just checking in with your body now. Noticing the nonverbal experience of this present moment as my voice just plays in the background. Sensing anything that might feel like tension or tightness, any areas of holding, anything that you don't need left over from earlier today or yesterday. And just compassionately observing that area of the body, just sensing it there in the privacy of your own mind, letting the question be directed towards your own higher mind. If this feeling were a color, what color would it be? If this feeling were a color, what color would it be? And what color would feel better? When you have that second color in mind, as if we were children playing with our imaginations, imagining that second color flooding down from the crown of your head into that area of the body wherever that first color had been, seeing it expelled from your system, flaking and floating away like ashes carried off in a breeze, as that second color is moving up and down, right and left, back and front, coating, soothing, cooling, relieving, taking another deep breath. And just noticing, does it feel different now? If so, how? And just observing that difference, that space in between what was and what now is, as the breath continues easily of its own accord. And checking in now. Again with the body, acknowledging it as a physical space, as if we were opening the cabinets and drawers of our homes, cleaning out dust from the corners. I'd like you now to check in once more, noticing anything else that you don't need, any minor discomfort, any old tension or stress. And directing the question to your own higher mind now, if this feeling were a thing or an object, what would it be? If this feeling were a thing or an object in your home, what would it be? And asking yourself now, what do I need to do with it? What action shall I take? Feeling free to inquire, does it bring you joy? This thing or object, you can thank it, destroy it, gift it to somebody else, throw it away, put it on a shelf, clean it, Whatever intuitively comes to you, moving through that action in the privacy of your own mind as my voice just plays in the background, feeling it, seeing it, hearing it, smelling and tasting if they apply. And just dropping in again, observing now. Does it feel different? If so, how? And feeling your body connected, symmetrical and complete, balanced within wholeness. As my voice continues to play in the background now, I'd like you to feel free to bring yourself home. Your home, wherever that might be, wherever you might be returning to tonight. And having the benefit, the luxury, the ease of now doing this in the privacy of your own mind, where you can move as quickly, as boldly, as freely as you would like. Carrying with you non-verbally the principles we've been discussing for the last hour and change, I would like you to feel free now to make changes in your home. Notice what may have been hiding in plain sight before, but now you see. Notice that you can act on that now in the privacy of your own mind, like that. Feeling free to make changes as quickly, at the speed of light. Feeling free to make your space what it could be. Following the feeling, following a sensation of yourself. Experiencing lightness. Giving yourself all the space you need, not too little and not too much either, just enough. Exploring and enjoying this in the privacy of your own mind for a few more moments, feeling free to paint, to throw things out, to knock down a wall even. Giving yourself the freedom to play. Resting here a few more moments, and we'll continue. And with the next deep breath, allowing the mind to clear, sensing your body, the balance of energy and relaxation, naturally present after a day. And bringing your awareness back to the surface beneath you, the sound and tone of my voice and all the other sounds around us. In a moment, I'll count up from 1 to 5, and when I reach 5, I'll ask you to open your eyes. You'll be awake, alert, and ready for the rest of the evening. 1, another deep breath. 2, 3, 4, and 5, opening your eyes whenever you're ready. For anybody who would like to share any observations, we would love to hear a few in a moment. Before that, I wanted to tell a quick story too that just came to mind based on everything we've been talking about. And this happened just in a session that I had on yesterday, right? Sunday, yeah. A friend of mine who I was seeing, who is also a writer, and this is not the only session where this has happened. And again, if we consider ourselves with certain things, we might be able to also relate. My friend is a writer, and we were talking about struggles that she was having with her writing rituals. And we got to a point in the session, simplifying things further and further, where before we began the practical portion of the session, the hypnotherapy itself, I asked her, I was like, so just to be clear, is there anything in your physical environment stopping you from writing? No. And I think of sometimes a client that I had for some time who wanted to play piano, but didn't play piano. And they had a piano in their home. This man that was living with a piano, wanted to play piano, and wasn't playing piano. And it's right there. And how many of us can relate to that? So the whole session became just drawing a straight line, referring to yesterday, between her and the computer and her writing rituals, appreciating, again, trance-inducing substance, highly distracting. The computer is not a simple machine unless we make it one. So, there were layers of things happening, I'm sure, but were they important? Not really, So in just drawing this straight line between her and her writing rituals, at least in the session, I have yet to hear back on what her experience was like today, and we'll see how it goes this week. But in her body language and her receptivity and everything that she was saying to me, there were, I don't want to use the word revelation, but, I saw it dawning on her and the clarity of that, because it strikes me too. And of course, I can be just as guilty of this. So, those things that are right there that we are keeping ourselves from, let's not do that, right?
To add to that, I also feel like when you put your home in order, procrastination kind of begins to end, because now the only option is, well, I guess I'll just write because I don't have to worry about all of these other things that I had to do because I've already taken care of them. So I find working with clients too that that's a very sort of powerful moment from them when they realize that they have all of this time on their hands and now they can actually pursue their dreams and their goals and their hobbies. And, it's so exciting.
It's not a small thing. It's not just a method of folding, for instance, or in hypnosis's case, a magic trick or something. So, anybody care to share what they observed during the exercise?
Hi, thank you very much. This is very interesting. I was love the transformation of your home, and my home is pretty transformed. However, I sort of taken a note of my closet space, and what was coming up for me is, I don't have room for any more clothes. So what was coming up that I was like, wow, I really need to make changes in all my closet. What I was thinking, I'm recognizing as well that I have a lot of clothes in there that doesn't fit me. And I know I'm keeping them there because I know I'm going to get into them eventually. And I don't want to throw them out either. So what do you have recommendations on that? It's not like I wouldn't hold on to these pants because, those are expensive pants, and I don't feel like in my heart that I want to get rid of them because I do want to get back into that size, right? So I recognize, I guess what was coming up, and I was like, well, maybe I just need to take all the clothes that doesn't fit me and store them away, and maybe that's what's holding me back from not losing the weight.
I have a lot to say about that because that is, it's something that I've personally gone through myself, and then I see it with a lot of clients, both female and male clients. If you have clothes that do not fit you, for whatever reason that is, they should not be in your closet. That's my personal opinion,
I agree.
and I'll tell you why. Because that's not living in the present. And part of that is you are comparing yourself to this past version of yourself, which is not serving you. And maybe when you open your drawers or you look on the rack, you're reminded of this time in your life that you were excited about because you were that size and that fit you. And so it brings all of these wonderful memories to your mind. But the fact that you're not fitting in them now is making you sad. And that has to go. And, you know, I vacillate between suggesting that clients put things away and or to just discard them, because this is what I've run into personally. Well, one, if you put those clothes away and you just take them out of your physical space where you're, you know, getting dressed every day, you're kind of putting them in purgatory, and it's not fair to the objects. They should go on and continue living their life and maybe bringing excitement and joy into someone else's life. I can speak to your designer situation as well, because we invest a lot of time and money into these clothes and we acquire them over time, and they are precious to us. But if you let those items go with gratitude and love, and you let them leave and live gracefully, you're going to attract something better into your life. And I've had this moment with my favorite pair of skinny jeans, and I could no longer fit into them, but I kept them in my drawer anyway because they were expensive designer pants, and I was like, I'm gonna get back into that size. I'm gonna get back into that size. But it wasn't a source of an excited motivation. It made me sad when I opened the drawer, and I finally did fit back into them, and I put them on. I'm like, this is my moment. I'm putting on I can fit into these jeans. And I put them on, and I was a different person. And they felt like another person's jeans. And I was thinking to myself, well, if I get rid of these now, I'm okay with that. I feel okay with that, because I feel like that was the lesson that I was sort of learning, was that when you go back in time and you're reliving that moment, it's not as exciting. And those jeans brought me a lot of joy. I had a lot of good experiences with them, but I want a better experience. I want another experience and another experience and another experience. So I think, to speak to the idea of letting go, when you let go of things like that with gratitude and happiness and joy, you get to move on to the next exciting adventure with a new pair of jeans. So, and then in terms of designer clothes, I mean, there's consignment, there's ways to repurpose things, and that also speaking to the sustainability piece, because we overconsume so much now. And what do you do when you have all these clothes and then you feel guilty that you're discarding them? You can discard them with intention, and there's many ways that you can do that. A lot of resources out there.
Probably just needed to hear that, so thank you.
Anybody else care to share what they observed during the exercise, or any other questions, thoughts, anything at all before we start drawing towards a close? Did anybody knock down a wall? Yeah, please.
So I have a studio apartment.
You got a mic coming for you. Thank you.
So I have a studio apartment, and then I realized that the outward space, I'm keeping it very nice and clean and plants everywhere. So, you know, when other people come over, they see like, oh, this is great. But I just stash like all my stuff, and like all my closets are such a mess. And I think it's just, you know, represents like how I feel. Maybe it's more like, you know, I want to project a certain image, or I want to feel a certain way outside, but, you know, I'm not taking care of like the things like literally in my closet. So, and I was actually thinking, like I even have things like DVD player, and I have not used a DVD for I don't know how many years. So it definitely, it's a lot deeper than what I thought this workshop would be. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to just add on to that too. Part of this work is getting really conscious of what you have, because you probably pass by that DVD player all the time. Maybe you think about it, maybe you don't. But the fact that there's this blind spot to so many things that we have in our homes, I think, is the bigger issue. That's why I mentioned that thing about the books. Like, you actually have to physically take the books out. You have to physically take the clothes out, because they're chilling. They're at home in their space. They're comfortable, but you need to wake them up, and you need to wake up with them by bringing them physically into another room and assessing them in sort of a just seeing them in a new light by bringing them into a different environment. Because if they're sitting in the same place, you're going to pass over it again. You're not going to be aware of what's actually ailing you in so many ways.
Anybody else have any other questions or observations to share?
Can I just play the devil's advocate and ask like a complex question?
Please do.
Is KonMari just a way for people to ease their conscience who are guilty for overconsumption?
Say that again? I'm sorry.
Is KonMari just a way for people who feel guilty for overconsumption to ease their conscience?
That's a really good question. And there's another book called, I believe it's called The Art of Discarding. And I believe that's also a Japanese writer, but I could be wrong. And there's also Swedish Death Cleaning. And these are sort of really extreme versions of what Marie Kondo speaks about in her writings. And I think that people really respond to this idea of the purge, right? They love a detox, they love a program. And I think that while that's beneficial and you'll get immediate results from that, KonMari, from my experience, she's trying to teach clients and teach people that come in contact with her teachings so that they can go on and apply it to their lives moving forward. So you're not consistently having to go back and do this over and over again. Now, it's gonna, some personalities, it will attract that. It's just another activity to do to like mask the real issue. But if you go into the practice in the right order, in these categories without skipping it, you're going to have a transformation, whether you want to or not. There's no getting around it. But I think if you watch the Netflix show, you're just seeing a really quick result. Even though they're saying, 30 days later, she goes back and this is what they've done. It's still a process. And most people that I talk to, when I ask them, how far did you get? Oh, I just got through the close. So that, to me, implies that this is pretty challenging, and it's hard to do alone the whole way through. You can do it, but maybe if you do, you're missing a few things. So if you're like, I KonMari, it didn't work for me, my questions are, well, how did you do it? How did you apply it? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And 9 times out of 10, it's because they missed something. So I don't know if that answers your question. I can expand.
No, I think it does. That's helpful, and also because I think that it's because it is such a difficult process to purge that it's not.
It's hard.
Right. So it's not like a silver bullet, easy way out. Mm-hmm. So it's not just easing your conscience as much as
it's very confrontational too. I mean, think about it as if you're doing a juice cleanse. There's an end point, right? You're like 10 days, 7 days, 3, and with doing a home purge, you're really guiding the time limit in a lot of ways. And you're not necessarily guiding it by like, I want to get done by Friday. you're taking everything and looking at it, and you're confronting like a huge pile of clothes, and then the clothes are basically telling you how long this is going to take to get through. So it's also having a chance to become a master of your own process of getting through it. Like, how am I going to get through this? And that leads to these questions that you're going to start asking yourself, like, why do I have this? Or who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in life? Does the new Jessica want to show up in life wearing this? No, bye, you know? And then that's kind of where you have these aha moments where you are physically and visually having the experience of creating something for yourself. And I love that aspect. Maybe it's not so exciting when you get to the kitchen, but you know, you have these other categories in different areas, speak to different people, and I love it. I love doing this work, and I love continuously, you know, reflecting on the process.
Loving the depth of that question. I actually have a follow-up question. What have you noticed, because now I'm thinking about Konmariing my consumerism. What do you notice about yourself as a consumer having gone through this process? I imagine you buy things differently too, and look at the grocery store differently, and look at a clothing store differently, and ask yourself if you want this thing in your home before it even gets there.
Yeah. There's a lot of moments that, well, how do I approach this? So I consume a vegan diet. And I remember when I made that transition into veganism, I don't know, like 12 years ago now, it was a whole new world. I didn't know any vegans at the time. It was confusing. I just knew that I didn't want to eat meat and dairy. And I just started doing it. And then after that, I started thinking about, you know, because I was thinking about what I was putting in my body, and then I was thinking about, oh, well, these vegetables I'm eating, they're not organic. What's organic? And so it just kind of goes on and on and on, and you're discovering all of these things about taking care of yourself, and then you start thinking about, well, what's in this lotion I'm putting on? You know, it's such a rabbit hole, but one that comes over time. That's why... what was your question again? Because I was getting to...
The question was about how you consume in the world and how it's impacted your body.
So that had a profound effect on this idea of how I was consuming. And then when I moved through the Konmari method, I realized I don't want to mindlessly bring things into my home. I want to be very particular about what I let into my space, and this includes people, experiences, people that I work with. You start to get very picky and very specific. And I think that that only happens because you did that work on yourself first, and then you can sort of seek that out in a very particular way. And when you're in a store, you really start to evaluate things. Like, you're asking yourself, does this spark joy in the store? Like, okay, I know I don't wear patterns, but I'm like attracted to it because they put it on this display, and it was like the gotta have print of the season. But you really start to visualize immediately, oh, am I gonna actually wear this? Or is this being put in front of me to purchase because they have a whole, you know, elaborate advertising campaign geared at my age group? And even on Instagram, you know, it's very easy to just click and purchase things. And you start to consider what you want to spend your money on and where your money is best spent. And it becomes like just second nature, where you don't even make those purchases because the desire works like this. Oh, I would love to purchase this, and then you go out and you buy it, versus somebody's telling me I should have this, and then I am going to just keep purchasing and consuming. So that's a long answer to that, but
Talk about a trance state.
Yeah.
With the consuming,
yeah, because it's mindless. Like you can go on forever and just keep, just putting stuff in your cart. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good. But if you start to get critical about it, and also ask yourself, do you desire this, or is someone telling you should have it? So that's kind of tricky for the fashion industry, because there's a whole industry built on people concocting ads that you need this item. So it's battling that.
they might be in this room. Any other questions or observations? Anything anybody would care to share? All right. Well, we have one more. Yes, please.
Just a thought of my closet as well. I just did a whole decluttering in my office, and I guess the same thing goes. I have a lot of files, and I guess I can answer my own question, but if you have anything on this in particular, because even our desk and our office space, sort of similar to our closet, like, I don't want to throw these files away of clients that I worked with and thinking, I might save them just in case it kind of wakes up again. Or I guess the same point of the clothing, how do you recommend your office space to be with files? And because I have still a stack, and I was like, no, I don't want to throw those out because, that may be a potential client. So
Did you read, did you happen to read the book,
which one?
The Magic of Tidying Up?
No, that's the Japanese.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I've heard everybody talks about it, so I should read it.
Well, no. Well, if you want, or
The
you can
Magic of
listen to
Tidying
it.
Up? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Magic.
So I would say she talks about papers. She has a very specific way of breaking down paperwork. It's particular to the home, but I work with clients that want to bring that method to their office. And there are things that you just have to hold on to that you need to keep, but there are ways of reducing that. There are ways of turning things into like digital files, which, digital Konmari is a whole other topic that we could talk about forever.
Oh, that would be another thing.
Yeah, but actually reducing in your office is totally possible. It's just about figuring out what it is that is needed physically and what you can discard. So I don't know what you do, so it would be, I wouldn't want to give like a generalized
I think anything that I
response.
have could probably be digital. Like, so I guess.
So there's your answer. And there's also this great book, I think it's called Getting Things Done. And there's another book called, is it 4 Hour Work Week? Yeah, one of them talk about inbox zero, and then Konmari talks about a pending file. So anything that you have to take action on should go into one folder, and you take action on those things. And anything that's not an action item or an item that you need to hold on to permanently she just says you discard all paper. So, but I don't know, again, what you do, so I wouldn't advise you to just throw all of your client files out. Like, I can't say that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
No, I think that was a good answer too, and it kind of just made me, okay, same thing as my closet. I need to go to my office and I need to electrify everything else. And you brought up the email, which was another thing I was thinking about, because I'm sitting and I'm like, gosh, I need to declutter my email inbox. I have 3 different, I also keep, So, but I never seem to get through it.
But see, like, even the way that you're talking about it,
I know, I
like,
just get exhausted by
it's
thinking about
like frustrating, because there are more things to do. There are more ways for people to contact you, to be in touch with you. So like, you're constantly being stimulated by information coming in, and there's, ways to get to inbox zero. I have not done that yet, but I'm working on it constantly. But I think even just, Konmari in your social media, like there are strategies, like I feel like I'm very alert and fresh in the morning. So if I go on social media for some reason, why would you do that when you wake up? But you do. I would look at the feed and I would apply Spark Joy to this at one point. I was like, why am I following this person or this company? They just piss me off. Like every time I see a post. So I would start to just unfollow people, and gradually I just would continue to edit those things down. And now it's less about editing and it's more about just like, what do I really enjoy? I want everyone on my Instagram that I follow, I want to enjoy them. I want to enjoy their content. So, and this is something that I totally didn't touch on a lot tonight, but the Konmari method, she's all about infusing gratitude and bringing joy into your life in terms of being in a grateful place and in an excited place and in a place where everywhere you look, you see something that is sparking joy, excitement, happiness, and that extends onto your inbox, into your work environment, to the people that you have in your life, and to your Instagram feed. I personally believe in all of that. I agree with 100%.
Yeah, thank you. There's I just talked about having another topic for discussion, because there's a few startups now that have started creating no email culture, and they've grown substantially by using different other method. So it's like a total no email culture in the company. So I guess it kind of probably comes from this method.
I like that.
Yeah, they use Trello and they use others, and they just take everything.
Oh, I thought you meant they just don't talk to each other.
Well, that causes people to need to talk to each other instead of sending these emails, and they're
True.
using different other systems. And there was like a whole article that was written up about it. And this guy has built billion-dollar companies, and now he went into startup and just no email culture. So it's very kind of probably the same as, I don't know how he's going to do that, or how he does it, because they're already doing it and they're doing it very successfully.
Well, speaking of gratitude, thank you very much, everybody, for being with us this evening. Again, if there's a central principle that I think we would like you to take with you tonight, it is this deeper awareness of how the internal and the external do reflect each other, and that these structures exist for organizing these spaces. Again, speaking at least from where I'm coming from in terms of hypnosis, deeply misunderstood, but there are tools that are available that can help us, again, organize, declutter, enlighten, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you very much for being with us. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you,
guys.
Ryan. Thank you,
Have a wonderful
Jessica.
night. Wonderful to be with you.
Yo, that was some amazing stuff. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for that exercise. I know we're all gonna go home and have Marie Kondo dreams. I know I am for sure. Thank you guys so much for being here. Again, if you wanna find more information out, come find myself. Get home safe, and we'll see you all very soon. Have a beautiful evening.